Welcome to our full-time missionary training videos. These videos are designed to help you get a firm, broad understanding of what it means to become full-time missionaries in the foreign lands. These videos will be a massive blessing and it will help you get started right in the mission field. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel because what we're going to do is be continually uploading content that will be valuable to you to help you in your work in the foreign lands. Also, if you're somebody that's wanting to get into the mission field, but you really don't know how and you need help, please contact us. There's a description in this video and we provide the link to do so. We would love to walk you through the process. Also, we have a Facebook group. That link is in there as well. That Facebook group is missionaries around the world collaborating and networking together, strengthening one another in the work that we're doing in the foreign lands. And then one final note, this whole entire series is based off of a book, Pursuing the Call, with Danny Lamastra. He's a missionary in El Salvador. I highly recommend you getting a copy of that. And again, thank you so much for being here. We pray that these videos are a blessing to you. Thank you. Okay, Danny, we talked about preparation, as far as in the spiritual sense and so forth, and, working in the kingdom of God, serving the kingdom of God, allowing God to prepare you for the mission field as far as what you may be doing in the mission field. But also, too, there's, logistical type of things that you need to prepare for, too. So that's what we're going to talk about now. And this is, again, just a section from your book, Pursuing the Call. So just share with us about some logistical type things that we have to consider.
Yeah. So when I was writing the book, I got to the end of the book and I realized there was a lot of just random logistical considerations that you need to make as a missionary that really didn't fit cleanly anywhere in the book. And a lot of these were things that I had never really read in any other missions book, because it's just random stuff that you have to consider when you're moving to another country, but that nobody really talks about. And so that was basically what this chapter was in the book, and what this conversation is going to be is all those little random things that you need to consider when you're doing an international move. And for me personally, I feel like a lot of this stuff kind of crept up on me at the last minute because I wasn't really thinking about it until it actually came time to move overseas. And talking to other missionaries, I feel like a lot of missionaries have had some of those same experiences where at the last second they realized, oh my goodness, there's all these different logistics that go into an international move that I'd never really considered. And I was supposed to be flying out next week. And so now what do I do?
Yeah.
So we can break this down, I guess, into sections, and we'll start out with some of the financial considerations. And so obviously we have another video that's entirely dedicated to fundraising. And so that's not what I'm talking about here. But as far as financial considerations, there's a number of considerations that you need to make when you're moving overseas. One of them, do you have any debt? If you are able to pay off all of your debt before you become a missionary, that is going to be incredibly beneficial for you. And there's some missions agencies actually that won't even take people who have debt, or will have limits on how much debt a missionary can have in order to be approved. Some sending agencies and mission organizations have that policy. But whether they do or not, it's definitely going to free you up significantly if you don't have debt. When you are a missionary, oftentimes your salary is coming from donations that people are giving. And what that means is that it's not 100% guaranteed. If a person, for whatever reason stops giving, then you didn't receive that money that month. And that's less money that you're then able to use for whatever you need to use it for. And so having, that financial freedom to not have to worry about paying off debt and being able to just focus on ministry and put as much resources as possible toward the ministry is something that's going to be beneficial in a big way. A second consideration, as far as finances are concerned, is banking. So when you are in another country, you have to make a decision. Are you going to open a bank account in that local country, or are you going to continue to use your bank from whatever your home country is? Depending on what your bank is in your home country, it may not be a very easy thing for you to be able to continue using that bank account as your primary bank account. When I became missionary, I actually switched bank accounts because I realized that the bank account that I had been using my whole life had some pretty significant foreign transaction fees on their debit cards. And that obviously was not going to be helpful if you're living in a foreign country. And so my recommendation, if you are a US or Canadian citizen, would be Charles Schwab. If you want to have a bank account that's good for being able to use in multiple countries, they have no foreign transaction fees. They have ATM rebates for any fees that you get charged at local ATMs. I've always they were the bank that I switched to when I became missionary, and it's been a good experience. So they're not paying me to say that, but Charles Schwab, if they see this video and they want to send some money my way as a sponsorship, I'll accept that.
There you go.
Yeah, but and then as far as opening a bank account is concerned in the country that you're going to, that's something that you may or may not be able to do depending on your immigration status and what the laws are in that country. But even if you're able to do it, you may not want to do it. You may think that it's easier just to have everything in one bank account. Really, there's pros and cons to both. Having it in some ways makes your life easier, and having it in some ways can complicate your life if you have to worry about multiple accounts as opposed to just one. The one thing that I do want to mention as far as a foreign bank account is concerned, if you do decide to open one and you're a U.S. citizen at least, there are some reporting requirements. That if you have a certain threshold of money in that account at any point during the year, you may need to report that on your taxes. And so that's something to take into consideration. And that really brings us to the third aspect of finances that have to be considered, and that is taxes. And so as a missionary, as anybody that's living overseas, you most likely are going to have some sort of tax liability still to whatever country you're originally from, whatever country you have your citizenship in. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay taxes. In the United States, for example, we have what's known as the foreign income exclusion, which means that if you're making less than a certain amount of money per year, then the money that you're making while overseas, you don't pay income tax on, but you still have to report it. You still have to file a tax return. Mm-hmm. And so, regardless of what country you're from, there's a good chance that you will have some sort of reporting requirements. And so that's something that you want to look into. And then in some countries, you may also have some reporting requirements or tax requirements in the country that you're going to. And that's something that you would need to talk to either a tax lawyer in that country about. And hopefully, if you have a good missions organization, they should be able to orient you to all of those different things as well. So I'll pause for a second. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add about
Yeah, finance. I was taking notes here because I definitely want to add a few things. Talking about debt free, just like what Danny said, that needs to be your goal. You really cannot go to the mission field and having that hanging over your head. I remember years ago, we had a gentleman in our church that was called the Nicaragua. And all of a sudden he pulled up in a brand new, I don't know if it was a Ford Expedition or something like that, but it was brand new, $50,000 vehicle. And he said to my pastor, "Hey, this is my mission vehicle." And my pastor's like, "How much is the payment on that thing?" It was like $400 to $600 a month. And he's just like, you can't even get parts for that down there in Nicaragua. So anyway, I mean, being debt free is just a massive freedom. It's just something I don't even think about as far as having debt in the United States. So definitely something that you should have a goal for. And just like Danny was saying on the banking, this is the thing that I really believe that a lot of missionaries make a mistake in. They don't really research this in depth. They think, I'm going to get in country, just use my debit cards. But that can work for maybe a month or something like that. But in time, once you start building a ministry or there's other financial expectations on your part, like maybe you're going to start paying salaries and things like that, you've got to get things lined up financially before you get on ground. You need to know how are you going to get money down from your current bank. And like Danny said, you've got to check out your bank. Is your bank going to even be friendly with you to work in a foreign country? I mean, we have a bank account in the United States. I mean, it's our ministry, it's our church, or it's our sending church's account. Thank goodness they work with us like on debit cards and things like that. But at the same time, we have to use that debit card so many times a year, or they'll cancel it. And then also we have to constantly report with them that we are still in Honduras. So, I mean, there's just things that you have to consider. Now, again, we don't use a debit card for business down here. We use an actual credit card that has international no transaction fees. And again, I know Schwab is huge with a lot of missionaries. It's a great way to do finances. And then, like, I myself use Zoom. I Zoom myself twice a month, and it's like Western Union, or I can't remember the other one, popular one. But
Just by the way, Zoom, we're not talking about the video call. We're talking about XOOM, which is
yeah, because people, I'm glad you pointed that out. XOOM, it's a financial service through PayPal. Basically, like I said, it's like Western Union. So literally, you could just Zoom money down to your account. But again, don't just assume you're going to walk down here and say, "Hey, I'm a gringo. I want to open up a bank account." They don't care if you're a gringo. If you don't meet the actual requirements within country to open up a bank account, they're not going to let you open up a bank account. And like in Honduras, you have to have your residency here in country before they'll allow you to open up a bank account. Now, bear in mind, there's some people that have they found loopholes and they've been able to do so. But again, it's not that easy. So again, I highly recommend you to be contacting other missionaries, speak to them, find out what the steps are to do that. And then you need to connect all the loopholes, or connect all the dots to ensure that you have a free flow of money. Because if you cannot get money while you're a missionary down on ground, it's going to be very miserable for you. And then, like taxes, like Danny was saying, I know that basically it's kind of like a lot of missionary considered self-employed in a sense. I don't know if you've ran into that. They may not really have any income to report, but as per se, meaning they have income to report, but it's not enough income to pay taxes on. But you still have to pay that self-employment tax. And I've done that myself. I have to pay that self-employment tax because we're considered self-employed in a sense. I don't know if you've ran into that, but I highly,
Yeah, I know missionaries that run into that. I personally have never been self-employed. I've always been under the banner of an organization.
Okay,
but
good.
Are classified as self-employed.
Yeah. So it's very important that you connect with an accountant that understands missionaries. Don't just assume your local accountant is going to understand missionaries. There are accountants that specialize in doing taxes for missionaries. So I would highly recommend to do that. And then also too, again, I don't know if you're going to bring this up, but also too, how are you going to handle your nonprofit? Some people actually go out and get a nonprofit. Some people, like I'm an umbrella underneath our church. Our church kind of like is our covering for nonprofit. Or there's mission organizations that you can join. They will collect your finances, and then, but you're basically operating under their nonprofit. I don't know if you know any names. I don't even know any names of those type of organizations, but I know a lot of missionaries that do that. Basically, they go underneath the umbrella of the company. They collect the donations, and the donations that are collected are, not under nonprofit umbrella. And then obviously they send you the taxation forms every year that you need to file taxes based on what they send you as far as the documentation and what they received in donations for you. So.
Yeah. And one other thing that I'll mention about finances that I was reminded of as you were speaking is if you are in one of those situations where you don't have to pay income tax, then if you're coming from the U.S., I would definitely recommend that you look into having a Roth retirement plan. If you can have a Roth 403b through your organization, or if you can have a Roth IRA just on your own. But whatever the case may be, I don't want to get into too much detail about that because that's something you can research and look up. But if you're in a situation where you're not having to pay income tax, you would definitely want all of your retirement plan to be in a Roth. That's definitely going to be more financially advantageous for you. Anyway, I think we've covered the finances, so we can move now into some of the healthcare considerations. So one of the biggest healthcare considerations that really can creep up on you is vaccines, and this is something that crept up on me at the last second. Depending on where you're going in the world, there may be diseases or different, parasites and things of that nature that are not normally in your home country. And so there may be vaccines that you need that are not normally needed in your home country. And when I say that you need, in some cases, it may just be a recommendation. In some cases, it may literally be a requirement that to set foot in that country, you have to have received a certain vaccine that you may not have received as a child because it's not normally a vaccine you would need in your home country. And so if you go to the CDC's website, the Center for Disease Control, they have actually a list of recommendations for vaccines for every single country. They'll specify on there which ones are requirements, which ones are just recommendations. But I would recommend, getting all of those vaccines, and if possible, before you leave. But if you find that it's really expensive to get it in your home country, because sometimes if a vaccine is not one that you would normally need in your home country, and you have to go to what's called a travel doctor to get it, it may end up being a little more expensive. Then in that case, you may decide that you want to wait till you get to the country you're going to actually get that vaccine to save a little bit of money. But whatever the case may be, those are important, especially if it's a requirement for immigration. It's definitely important. And that's something that if you're able to get it out of the way before you leave, it's one less thing you have to think about when you get there. Yeah. Another thing you have to make to consider when you're going overseas is what are you going to do for health insurance? So there's really a few different options. The one, which is probably not the wisest idea, is to just be uninsured. I know a missionary that's done that. And the people that I know who have done that, their line of reasoning is that, well, healthcare is so cheap here where I'm a missionary that why do I need insurance? I can just pay anything out of pocket. The problem with that is that works great when you have like the flu. But if you like break your arm or have cancer or anything, basically if you have anything that you may potentially need to return to your home country for, and you don't have any form of health insurance, then that could definitely present a problem for you. And so one option that I would not recommend is to be uninsured. But the next option is to have a local insurance plan. That's what I've done for the majority of the time that I've been in El Salvador. I have a local plan here in El Salvador that includes some level of coverage worldwide in case I were to need to use it in my home country. But that's what I do personally. And then the other option that you can look for is what's known as an expat insurance plan. And these are insurance plans that are designed to be used specifically by expats, meaning people that are away from their home country. And these type of plans can usually be used anywhere in the world at no problem. There's a couple of benefits and drawbacks to whether you choose local plan or an expat plan. So the biggest benefit of a local plan is that it's probably going to be cheaper if you're going to a developing nation than what you would pay for an expat plan. And then also it's going to probably be easier to use in country because if doctors that locally have the billing already set up, then you're just paying your copay. You're not having to worry about reimbursements and stuff like that. Whereas with an expat plan, you have to pay everything out of pocket up front usually, and then you submit it for reimbursement. The benefit, of course, of an expat plan is that it's more flexible. You don't have to worry about a network, and so you can go to any doctor you want. Any doctor, for example, that your country's embassy recommends, you could go to. And also an expat plan is usually going to have more coverage in your home country. So that's obviously a benefit as well. But that whole decision of what you decide to do in healthcare, that's a decision that everybody has to make, and it's definitely something you want to consider. And then lastly, if you have any type of medication that you're on an ongoing basis, you would definitely want to research how it is that you can get a hold of that medication in the country that you're going to. If it's something that's really important for you that you need, you definitely are going to want to have ways set up ahead of time to be able to get that medication, whether you need to have that brought from the United States some way or from whatever your home country is, or whether you're going to have to figure out a way to get that in country at a pharmacy. You definitely are going to want to have that lined up before you actually move, because if you get over there and it's a medication you really need and you're not able to get it, that's going to be a problem. And it could, depending on how severe the situation is, as far as your medical needs, it could even result in you having to come off the field. And so definitely that's something you want to know ahead of time for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. On the medicines, we have a missionary here locally. she's a diabetic, and a lot of times you can find your medication here locally cheaper in many cases. I'm not saying it all, but her diabetes medicine was like it was just skyrocketed through the roof pricing. So she literally had to bring all her insulin from the States down here. I mean, I remember when she moved here, she stayed with us. She had like hundreds of insulin injections in our refrigerator, So, I mean, she prepared, obviously. As far as on the medical insurance, I was having a conversation with a couple in our church in the United States, and they're on this, Christian medical insurance program in the States. And for him and his wife, it's $350 a month. I mean, it's absolutely incredible to think that you could have that type of insurance for you and your wife, because obviously a lot of medical insurance is extremely expensive, and they actually cover missionaries as well. It's Christian medical insurance. I don't have a specific name. I know there's several different ones out there. I know our neighbor in the States was on the same type of plan. So just another resource for you to look at. But like Danny was saying, like in Honduras, we have like an association, so to speak, that helps you get your residency and things like that. That's one thing that they do offer in that association, is having medical insurance. And it's like $1,300 a year. I mean, it's crazy if you really think about that. As far as that price, that's nothing, almost basically $100 a month, $150 a month, so that's very cheap insurance. So, and I think that was for a couple, $1,300 a month. So definitely, in country, and some countries do have missionary associations, and you might want to check and see if they have anything to offer there. But that's really all I have on medical.
Yeah. And so I guess then the final aspect of logistical preparations would probably be the legal aspects, because there are a lot of legalities that you have to consider whenever you're immigrating to a new country. And so first of all, check with your missions agency. They should be able to help you get an idea of what type of requirements you need as far as documents and things like that to be able to apply for your visa, how early in the process of moving you want to start that process, and things like that. All of that is stuff that you'll need to know. And one of the things that you will most likely need is what's called apostille documents. And so the vast majority of countries in the world are going to require any legal documents that you have from another country to be apostilled in order for them to have validity overseas. And an apostille is basically like a notary, but for international purposes. So it's different. A person that's normally a notary couldn't apostille a document. Apostilles take place through the government. And so depending on what the document is, would determine what government agency is the one that would apostille it for you. But any document that you could potentially need in life overseas, birth certificates, marriage certificates, potentially diplomas, driving license, anything like that. Background checks is another big one that you may need to present from your home country for immigration. All of these different types of documents will need to be apostilled before you can use them overseas. And that process of getting the apostilled is not fast. Depending on what state you're from, if you're from the United States, it could take a couple months for you to get those documents back. And so that's definitely something that you want to start as soon as possible, getting those documents apostilled. Also, this may seem like an obvious one, but definitely make sure that your passport is up to date. Some countries actually will require you to get a different passport if your passport's even within 6 months of expiration, which really made sense to me because that kind of defeats the purpose of the expiration date. But basically, don't let your passport get close to expiring. If you need to renew it, get that done as soon as possible. And if you're overseas and it's going to expire, you need to get in contact with your country's embassy. Most countries are going to have a way for you to renew that passport while being overseas. You shouldn't have to go back to your home country. But you do need to make sure, again, that you don't let that get within 6 months of expiration. Because if you do, then it's going to put some restrictions on what countries you're able to go to. Another aspect of legal considerations is maintaining an address in your home country. So a lot of things that you may need to do in your home country, whether it's filing taxes, having bank accounts open, any legal documents, voter registration, things like that, they're going to require you to have an address in that country. That's not always the case. There's some documents that you can actually use a foreign address for. In fact, I mentioned taxes. Taxes, at least in the United States, is one that you could actually use a foreign address for. But whatever the case may be, you would definitely need to have an address in your home country for something if you plan on doing any type of business there. And normally that's easy to resolve. You can just use a family member's address or a close friend. But if you really are stuck, there is what's called a virtual address, where you basically pay a company a monthly fee. They keep an address on file for you. It's basically a non-existent PO box, and then any mail that you receive, they would forward to you while you're overseas. And so that's an option if you're really stuck. And then last but not least, if you are a U.S. citizen and you're going to be moving overseas, I would recommend that you sign up for what's known as the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, which is also known as STEP. And STEP is basically something that the State Department manages, so that every country's embassy, the U.S. embassy in every country has a record of U.S. citizens that are in that country. And that can become extremely important in the event of a national emergency or a natural disaster. These are the types of things that nobody really thinks about actually happening, but it could happen. I'll say, for example, in El Salvador, when the pandemic, COVID-19, really started to take hold and there started to be lockdown restrictions, things of that nature, the U.S. Embassy was very active in trying to communicate important information to U.S. citizens. And if you aren't registered with the embassy, well, then you're not going to get any of that information, which could be extremely important information, depending on what the situation is. And I would guess that most countries have a similar program. If you're not from the U.S., you can check out what type of program your country has. But as long as your country has an embassy in the country that you're going to be living in, there's a good chance they have some sort of program like that. And so those would be the legal considerations that I would mention as far as logistics are concerned.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to add a few things here. One thing that I know is in a lot of the countries in Central America, we all have Facebook groups that we can go to. I'm a member of the Facebook group in El Salvador as well, even though I live in Honduras. That's how I found you. So, it's really important to connect with Facebook groups of missionaries or even expats. You may not be aware of it, but expats are basically individuals that may not necessarily be missionaries. I mean, there's missionaries that are a part of expat groups. So these are great resources. These are great resources for you to join the group and ask tons of questions. Prepare. Because like Danny's saying is you don't want to at the last minute be scrambling, trying to prepare for this stuff. Now again, we have the association here locally that helps us get our residency, but not all countries have that type of association. So I would highly recommend you to go to a Facebook group and say, look, what's a good immigration lawyer that you can trust? And then preferably this bilingual. Obviously, if you're in the United States, someone that can speak English, because they're going to tell you what paperwork you have to have. Because again, Danny's talking about we call it a apostille. Maybe that's in Spanish, but you have to have an apostille for that paperwork. So like in our case, we came from Kentucky. It was what is it called? The state Secretary of State.
Yeah.
They're the ones that handled all of ours. So we forwarded all of our documents to them. They provided the apostille and they sent it back. I think I'm saying it right. I mean, that's kind of what I've always heard him say. Is that Spanish? Is apostille?
It's apostille, but I just looked it up.
Apostille. That's okay.
I just looked it up about 5 minutes before we started this podcast because I wasn't sure. So
yeah. Okay. Kind of like how I was mispronouncing your name for the last 10 videos. And then you finally told me you're not saying my name right. So anyway, like he said, you got to make sure that you're lining this stuff up. I mean, come on, let's get started about 6 to 8 months in advance. Now, we hopped around from country to or state to state in our lifetime, as far as my wife and I. So we had to get some documents from some other states that we lived in, like New Mexico. I needed to get a birth certificate with a apostille. Again, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but so there's websites that actually do all this for you, so you can actually pay to have your birth certificate pulled, and then that apostille from that actual state to be done. So that's something that you can do there. But again, I highly recommend you either contact an association within the country to walk you through the residency process, and do that well in advance, because you don't want to come down and then go, oh, I don't have that paperwork. No, you want the paperwork when you come down. And then also, if you can't find an association, find a lawyer that will help you do that. Another thing, we haven't talked about this, but I think it's really important. When we first came down here, it really wasn't friendly, I guess. So we went through Skype to get a phone number, like a stateside phone number that people could call. And then we had to pay a monthly plan. Well, now, do not do it. Please write this down. Do not do this when you're in the country. Before you leave, get a Google Gmail email address, and then connect yourself to a Google Voice number. And then more or less, as long as you have Wi-Fi connection, or through the self-service that you have in country, as long as you have a media plan, you will be able to make phone calls to the States, landlines and cell phones to the States, and receive phone calls. So I highly recommend you to get a Google Voice phone number, because basically I have a stateside phone number. People can call me anytime. I can call them stateside. It does not cost me a penny as long as I have an internet connection. So, and then, you were talking about the mailboxes, the virtual mailboxes. I had one that basically every day they would just email me, or I could log in and see what they scanned of my mail. And then basically I just say destroy, or whatever. And then if I needed it forwarded somewhere, obviously I could send it to like my daughter's home or a family member's home or something like that. So they have those. But we, as our ministry, we have actual PO box. And then we have a friend that goes and checks that like weekly.
Yeah.
So
one other consideration that you may be able to speak to more than me, because I don't have any kids, but if a person has kids and they're going to the mission field, they would obviously need to think about schooling. What are they going to do for their kids' schooling if their kids are still school age? So you have any thoughts on that?
I myself don't, because I brought down a freshly graduated high schooler when we moved to the mission field. So, really, honestly, just my observation. I'm not knocking developing country, education system, but for the most part, most missionaries will either do homeschooling or they will do like a private bilingual school. That's really the two options that I see. Yes, I know of some missionaries that have sent their kids to public school, but that's not common. That's not something I've commonly seen. I've seen more of just a private bilingual school. So, but again, I think that, obviously, if you're going to go the homeschool route, because obviously private bilingual, that's something they'll have to pay for. If one of the spouses can actually do homeschooling, or you might be joining an organization that, there's a group of missionaries here locally that you guys can team up on doing homeschooling as a whole. Obviously, that's something else that I've seen as well down here. So homeschooling, private school, or kind of like collectively working together as a community doing homeschooling. So is that kind of what you have observed, or because I know you're a part of an actual organization. So
I would say in El Salvador, we have what's called the El Salvador Missionary Fellowship, which is nice because everybody gets to know pretty much all the missionaries that are in country, and geographically the country is not that big. So you to stay in contact with people. Most of the people that I've met tend to fall into that bilingual school category. But that's not always a possibility for everybody, because if you live like out in the boondocks, you're doing ministry in the middle of nowhere, you may not have a bilingual school anywhere near you. So in that situation, homeschooling may be your only option if you don't want to send your kid to a public school. Just think about as you're preparing. Also, one thing that I think is worth mentioning is that not every country has the same calendar for school. And so in El Salvador, for example, we go January to November, whereas in the United States, you're used to going either August to May or September to June, depending on what part of the country you're in. And so as you're thinking about timing for the move, you may want to look into what's going to be the best time to move for the school to overlap best. So that's just one other thing that you may want to consider as you're thinking about your move.
Yeah. Now, one other thing that, because again, I think, more and more people are becoming aware of these type of things. Another thing that definitely need to consider, at least for me, was VPN, a virtual private network. Extremely important because, like we have, financial organizations that if they sense that you're logging in from like Honduras or El Salvador or wherever, they're going to block you. They will not allow you to access their services. So that's something you definitely want to make sure that you look into. You're smiling. What are you smiling about?
I had a VPN for so long that I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
If I write a second edition of the book, that's got to go in it. But yeah.
Yeah. Cause I mean, it's just it's your life. I mean, I use it constantly, especially watching TV, using a VPN to watch TV. So, basically for anybody that may be watching this, and you don't know what it is, it's just basically, it's kind of like a private tunnel from your computer to their server, so to speak. So it's like nobody can sense where your IP address is. They give an IP address in the States. Then now they think, okay, this person's in the United States. And then, also you need like cloning tools, like, so to speak, to give a fake GPS address or GPS location on your cell phones. I know this sounds crazy. And one lady thought, I was telling her all this. She's like, oh, you're just circumventing the banks. You're doing stuff that's illegal. No, it's not illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. So basically, I would highly recommend. I don't know what service you use. We use ExpressVPN. Incredible service. It's on your cell phone, on your laptop. I have a GPS spoofer. That's what they call it. Basically, you could just go on there on the map and say, okay, this is exactly the location I'm at. I pick it on the map. I always pick a location where the server is. And again, I know I'm getting technical here, but you'll pick server locations in the United States of your VPN. So you'll say, well, I want a server location in New Jersey. And I mean, that's really where my server location is. And so I pick New Jersey on the actual ExpressVPN. That gives me an IP address in New Jersey. And then what I do is I pick a location. It's the same location always over by the airport. So I just pick that same location. So my cell phone is saying I am at this location and this is my IP address in New Jersey. So I never have any problems logging into, PayPal or my banks or anything like that. And then also we can watch Netflix from the United States, Amazon Prime from the United States. I don't have Hulu and things like that, but like Discovery Plus, you can watch and so forth. So definitely something you want to think about. One other final thing is you could actually buy a route. Is it a router? Yeah, it's a router. You can buy a router from ExpressVPN that is a name brand router, but what they do is they go in and they put their actual firmware in it. So then your whole entire house is under a VPN. So anyway.
We got to send this video to ExpressVPN and Charles Schwab because we gave them both pretty good reviews.
Yeah, exactly. We need some promo money here. So, but anyway, I think this is an awesome video. I think it kind of really helped people understand. And again, please do not start planning at the last minute because there's a lot of work behind moving to the foreign lands. I know that in our hearts or in our lives, we started in April of 2013 in preparing, and basically we moved in October of 2013. So, that time frame we used to basically prepare ourselves to now we didn't sell our house. We kept our home. Today we still rent our house, and thank God to the same people. 8 years later, we're renting to the same people. So we have a management company that manages our home. I know a lot of missionaries have a tendency to get rid of their home. It's just that, our home is an asset for us. We have it almost paid for. So it's going to be an asset for us once it's paid for, as in meaning income, monthly income. So, just a lot of things you have to consider. So start writing down, taking notes. When thoughts come, take those notes down and, just start working on it slowly. And surely you will be logistically prepared. All right, man. Anything else before we close?
I think we hit it all.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate it as always. And so you and I have a couple more classes, and so we will be sharing those classes as well. Have a good one.
You too.